Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first discussion video of season 2 of Doctor Who. Welcome back, Sean.
Doctor Who, I thought this was The Last of Us.
You're so
Hello.
funny.
Aren't I just the funniest? By the way, is this me kind of plugging The Last of Us ups and downs, which will be available on WhoCulture Main? Maybe it is. But listen.
Spoilers!
Whoops. Hi.
Hi. It feels like it's been a while since we could discuss New Who. I mean, it has been a while. Well, I say it's been a while. Christmas.
Yeah, okay,
Christmas
yeah,
feels like a long time ago.
and also, see, it's been Get Out the Tiny Villain, it's been worse for me, Ellie, because you went to a screening of this episode about a fortnight ago, whereas I watched it with everybody else on Saturday.
This is true. I did do that. It was pretty cool, not gonna lie.
Good, I like this. I like this.
I'm not going to pretend it wasn't cool. I was very lucky to be there. Very much felt the imposter syndrome most of the time. Just kind of stood in the corner like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here.
Okay, listen, I don't know if this is going to make the edit, but I'm not just trying to blow smoke up your arse here. You were literally featured in half of the, clips and footage and,
That was so
best of
crazy. I was
moments.
just watching it through, watching them answer all the questions, and I was like, hang on a second, that's me. Anyway.
Anyway.
Anyway, what we're actually here to talk about is the robot revolution. Now, if you haven't already, people watching this video, watched my ups and downs, I would suggest you go and do that. So you've all heard my thoughts on the episode, but Sean, I want to hear your thoughts on the robot revolution.
So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good welcome back. I thought, good bit of energy, nice bit of timey-wimey stuff going on. Kind of what I'm looking for in a season premiere. It wasn't the greatest episode I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't really expect that of a season premiere where we're introducing a ton of new characters either. So I'm not losing sleep over that, if you know what I mean. Really like Belinda. Obviously, we'll get into it. Really like Belinda. And I like that a bit like when Peter Capaldi took over as 12. I like that they go, yes, we know she's been in this before.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that we don't get 5 episodes down the line. Oh, I've just realized you're familiar. Do you know what I mean? So that's good. I quite liked the overall reveal of kind of the villain. I do think the episode sort of ran out of steam about 3/4 of the way through.
I agree. I think one of my downs was that it kind of felt a bit static, was one of my downs. It felt very much like there were 3 main scenes once we got to the planet, and it was, we're going to go in this room, and then we're going to have a talk about what's happened. And then we'll have a gunfight, but then we're going to go to another room that's down below this room, and we're going to have another talk about what's happened. And then we're going to take you to another room, and here's the resolution, but we're basically going to just stand in this room and talk about it. And I was waiting for something to start happening. Like, where's all the chases down corridors and the things that Doctor Who is famous for? And obviously I do like talking, and I've had some criticism in the comments for the ups and downs where I've said that I miss the scenes that are a bit quieter, where you get a bit more of character development and conversations. And they're like, well, how can you say that that's what you want, but then this episode was too much talking? I get that, but a balance.
Yeah,
I want a balance.
Is it pacing? Is that
pacing? Yeah, I think pacing was a big issue. It was one of my downs for the episode, was the pacing. But this is not new. This is the same thing that happened in season 1. The episodes are shorter. There aren't as many of them. And unfortunately, pacing and the kind of quality of the stories is hindered by that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The robots were a bit too cute to be threatening. Yes, they are capable of doing some killing, but I thought they were a bit like, you kind of just want to hug them. I was kind of reminded of Baymax from Big Hero 6. And combined with the emoji bots from the one in season 10. So I was kind of like, oh, these are terrifying. Are they, though? Don't know how cat lovers would feel about this episode.
This is true. Well, we'll get to the cat, but first of all, I just want to circle back to what you'd said about Belinda. Um,
Mm.
I really like the character of Belinda. She was an up for me. Um, we've spoken extensively all throughout season one about wanting a bit more of a kind of conflicted dynamic between the Doctor and the companion. And what I really love about Belinda is that's what we get with her. She was
Mm.
kind of like a cross between Martha and Donna. She had lots of Donna vibes about her. And I just love that we've got someone who isn't just blindly following this man with just this awe about how wonderful he is, but she doesn't go along with it. She
Yep.
does call him out when he's in the wrong or when he's overstepping. I think the end scene where she points out to him, you just scanned my DNA, you just tested my DNA, you didn't even ask permission. And what I really like about that scene is the realization on his face. There's a real
Mm.
shock on his face that he's kind of like, oh, she's not like all the others. I can't just wow her with my big words and my eccentricity. She's not going to take this. And I think I really, really love this character. And I think a reason why I enjoyed this episode so much more than not all of the ones in season one, but a lot of season one is the companion makes such a difference. I never really warmed to Ruby.
I, yeah, I suppose Ruby, like Ruby had a lot of potential, and that was often used well. I mean, like I don't, it's not like I didn't like Ruby or anything like that, and I thought Millie was very, very good. I just what I got over really, really quickly was every episode being told, "We're best friends, we're best friends." We didn't see it.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and then in this one, I mean, what is it we love about Donna? Donna doesn't go in for the doctor's BS,
Hmm.
you know. And I'm definitely getting that vibe from Belinda. Belinda, a bit more hostile from Belinda, which works perfectly in the context of the story. I really like as well about you mentioned obviously about the DNA line, that it works on two levels. One, it's quite straightforward. You scanned my DNA without my consent. What the hell is wrong with you? So, yeah. But also, she's a healthcare worker. So it's kind of like it works double,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that is something I really really like. I just because I can't. It's not like it's funny when we have because we've had this kind of conversation a lot of time. It's not that we want the Doctor and the companion always button heads and not getting along. We just don't want the doe-eyed companion. I think I'm over that.
Yeah, I think so. And then I guess then leads us into this question of whether Belinda is the best companion that we've had in a while. And I know you commented earlier when we were talking about this that it's kind of hard to tell after one episode.
It's just too soon. What I will say is that great start.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
what I would add to that is I guess you could say, in a way, yes, just in terms of looking at the previous companions we've had for the last few years. I mean, if you look at Ruby, I mean, we had Donna, but Donna was already a companion, so I don't think we can
Yeah.
really count Donna. But then even if you look at the companions in Jodie Whittaker's era, all of those companions more or less were that doe-eyed, let's follow the Doctor. None of them really challenged the Doctor in any way. So I think in terms of mixing it up a bit, spicing it up, having a different dynamic and challenging the Doctor, we haven't really had that since Donna, really. I mean, even Amy and
Mm.
Rory, Amy just, she admired the Doctor from being a kid. He was this hero to her. So again, there was that kind of adoration. Um, Clara Clara was more of an enigma to the Doctor, but she didn't chat. She tried to be like him, which is part of the character I don't really like. They're trying to be better than the Doctor. Like, I can, like, know your place. He does know more than you. So pipe down. But we don't need to discuss my thoughts on Clara. But
For
I do.
further reading, see everything we've ever discussed about Clara before today.
But I do feel like maybe Bill was an example of a bit more of that kind of banter and maybe challenging the Doctor.
I liked Bill because I know we've talked about this already. I did season 10 a little bit later than others. God, it's weird to think how far back we're going, but I was suffering a little bit of Doctor Who fatigue at that point.
Yeah.
So I caught season 10 a little bit later on. And once, I mean, Bill and the Doctor really, really worked. I think any issues at season 10 came from it's been Doctor solidly for however long. You know, franchise fatigue is a very real
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and it's interesting that the characters that I would say are like at the top of the list of characters, like companions that are my favorites. Donna, Bill, the ones that aren't just the doe-eyed, let's
Yeah.
follow the Doctor blindly, and let's challenge him in a certain way, and they have a bit of humor about them. And I think Belinda definitely has those elements in her. She did have some wit, she did have some sass. The one thing I would say is, although we're like, she's not going along with it all, she's not just agreeing with the Doctor, she did seem, on the other hand, to be quite accepting of the fact that she was just taken to this planet by robots. And, you know, there was a lot of challenging, as in she was not going to agree to what they wanted her to do, but not a lot of, what the hell? I'm on an alien planet and there's robots and what's going on? It was kind of like, you accepted that a little bit too easily.
I think what happened is that she obviously thought she'd, you know, at the end of her shift in the hospital, she'd accidentally been needle sticked by some sort of hallucinogen, and she's like, I'm just going with it. Yeah, it's the safest thing for me to do now is just, I'm just going with it. And listen, I never liked that cat anyway, so, you know.
One thing I did notice in that though, right? I feel like she didn't like the fact that one of her housemates called her Linda. She was like, it's Belinda. But then later on, the Doctor started calling her Belle, and I did think to myself, you have not known her long enough to start giving her a nickname. And if she hated being called Linda, I feel like she should have been like, don't call me that. That's not my name.
Well, actually, that's a really good point because I think that's coming.
Yeah, I hope it is. I hope she's not just accepting, because I like that she challenges him, but I don't want her to be so accepting of things like that. That would bug me.
Yeah.
Because we'd already seen it. We'd already seen her not like to be given a nickname.
Because doesn't he say he calls her Bells? Because I just have this feeling like we know at some point Mel will be back for this season. You know, even a bit of like, is that what you do? You take a name with an L in it and you just do the same nickname for both Mel's, Bells. You know what I mean? Because I think just because he was calling her Belle and then she does the switch. So I think if maybe in the initial instance she was letting him go on so that she knew what she was about to say. But yeah, if it's something that continues on, I would like to see her call him out on it.
Yeah, it just felt a bit weird to me. I was like, you've known her for not long enough to be just giving her a nickname, and you reacted to someone else giving you one, so why are you not calling him out on it? You should have. But I think she's an interesting character, and I think I'm hoping it's not going to be too much of the mystery surrounding the companion as the focus of the story, because we've had so much of that already.
But Ellie, what if she is the impossible girl? Wouldn't you love that?
No, I would not. We had a whole season of it being like, who is Ruby's mother? Why is Ruby so important? Why is this happening? And I like that there's a mystery surrounding Belinda, but I hope that that's not the only focus of this. Like, let's make it more of a kind of broad story rather than just focusing on the importance of this character. Having said that, we do have some mysteries regarding Belinda. Lots of people pointed this out. This is something we actually, after the screening, one of the first things we all said to each other when we came out was, how did she know it was called a Tardis? Because no one ever mentioned it being called a Tardis. And I've seen a lot of kind of discourse about this online as to whether it means something, whether when the Doctor like went through her timeline, went through her life, he like transferred knowledge to her, or whether it was more likely to be a case of there was a line where he called it the TARDIS at some point in the episode that got cut and they didn't check properly, and so now she calls it a TARDIS and it doesn't make sense that she knows what it's called, but there was a cut scene that did have him tell her what it was called.
I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's not a cutscene. Just generally Doctor Who's been pretty good. Could be that, but generally Doctor Who's been pretty good with that.
You say that. Apparently, according to someone whose video I saw earlier on social media, Jackie Tyler Googled, or whatever the 2000s version of the Google was at the time, Googled TARDIS when she was searching the Doctor in, I think, World War III. But at no point had actually been told that it was called the TARDIS.
This might be a reach, but at this point, I'm reminded of a line from Torchwood Children of Earth. And it's when Gwen is meeting the guy in the insane asylum, and he goes like, "Oh, there's no such thing as aliens," and she's like, I think we're a little beyond that at this stage. Like, is the Doctor and the TARDIS common knowledge at this point?
I don't know. Maybe. Let's go
Which
with that.
which I would absolutely not hate as a storyline. It would need to be kind of addressed.
Yeah.
You know, be like, oh, the Doctor's there yet. Or have someone like get cut to random, like Russell likes to do, cut to random bystanders going, well, I hope the Doctor gets us out of this, and go off back to the shop or something like that.
The one thing, though, that does make this questionable is the Doctor didn't react to her calling it a TARDIS. So if she now knows what it's called and we've pointed out that she hasn't been told it, why did he not respond kind of like, I didn't tell you it was called a TARDIS. How did you know it was called the TARDIS? If he'd reacted as if to say, how did you know that?
Well,
That would be,
didn't he go through her life like a bullet? Did he do some interacting while he's in there?
Well, that's the theory I've been seeing circling, which I guess would make sense. Yeah. I mean, that whole sequence was very
It's very
strange.
throwaway. I thought it was
It
very throwaway.
was.
Like, I know they obviously
Yeah.
do reference it, and like, I was to talk about that now in a second, but it was kind of like, it took me a second to realize, and not in a, oh, this is what this is, and more just like, oh, is that what that was?
Visually, it looked really cool.
Hmm.
As like it's like if you look at it kind of from a cinematography point of view, the colors, the flashes, the sounds were really cool. But in terms of the story, I was kind of like, oh, that's the solution there. Cool. And yeah, I mean, the only thing I think maybe is slightly intriguing, and I don't know whether it's going to be important later on. We did have a very brief shot of the Doctor holding a baby when he was going through her life. Now, I just assumed this was kind of him going through her life, and at some point he saw her as a baby. It was Belinda as a baby. But it did seem like a strange kind of shot to have there. And I don't know whether that's going to come back at some point. I don't know, I kind of feel myself going back into the Impossible Girl situation. You know, how Clara kind of put herself in the Doctor's life, and it feels like it's now kind of the opposite has happened. I don't know whether it means we're going to kind of find out a bit more about the Doctor as a parent down the line. I don't know. I can't figure out whether this is just something we're reading into too much, or whether there's more mystery or foreshadowing going on in this very brief shot of the Doctor holding a baby.
I think what I will do is I'll put my little prediction in now that baby is Belinda.
Yeah, I think that's my thought. I don't think there's more to it than that. I think, judging by the context of the scene, the Doctor went through her entire life, so it makes sense that you saw her old, you saw her as a baby, you saw the Doctor holding her as a baby. Yeah. Okay, so there's a few more things I want to touch upon in this episode. First of all, I think we should address the elephant in the room, the thing that a lot of people have been commenting on, and I think we were lenient towards at the beginning, and now, as season 1 went on, I did start to comment on more. Now, I'm very much past it. Who else was just counting down for the scene where the Doctor started crying again?
You said it well just before we started recording. You said it's every episode.
Yeah, this is the thing. I am not, and I've said this so many times, I've said it till I'm blue in the face in our discussions in season 1. I'm not against having a Doctor who's more in touch with their emotions. I think that's a really good thing. But if you just use it every single episode, it happens every single... Where's the impact? It's not new, it's not different anymore, it's just predictable, and we're all sitting there waiting for the moment it happens at this point, and we just roll our eyes. It's not having the desired effect.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to be honest with you, we will get it every episode.
Yeah, this is the thing I was thinking as well, because you would hope that maybe they would look at criticisms you might have had for season 1 to improve on season 2. But this episode was recorded back to back with season 1. So any feedback we gave to season 1 would be irrelevant to season 2 because season 2 was already filmed before season 1 aired. So
Yep,
I kind of...
true.
Yeah, so any criticism we had for season 1 won't be improved upon in season 2 because it was already filmed by then.
So I suppose just challenge to you for the ups and downs then is there one down for every episode waiting before you hit play on each episode this season?
Yeah, just everybody remember there's a one down already standing there because the crying. I don't know, the thing is, right, like I said, I'm not against an emotional Doctor. I'm not against that at all, and I think to start with, it was impactful. It was like, this is new, this is different. But if it happens all the time, it just stops being meaningful. And how much more, if you watch something on the TV and you have a character who cries every episode, you're just like, out there crying again. If there's a character who very rarely cries and then they do, it's so much more impactful. You're like, wow, this is serious, because they don't usually get emotional. They're usually, but I mean, and the thing is, there were moments in season 1, and arguably this moment in this episode, where it could be very much justifiable. But because it's happened every episode, it's not a standout moment anymore. And I think, going back to that comment we had about pacing, one of the things that I commented in the ups and downs about the pacing was with regards to this crying scene. Because, as you said as well, we've had a lot of telling us rather than showing us. And if they had, like, you know, justifiably, if a character has or any person has formed a bond with someone and they watch them die in front of them, of course that's going to make them cry.
100%.
It may make them sad. But because we as the audience spent about 2 minutes with Sasha 55, we barely saw any interaction between her and the Doctor. And then we're told in a single line of dialogue that they'd spent 6 months together and had become really close. We felt no connection to Sasha or to the relationship that they had developed between themselves. So to us, it was just an exaggerated response because he's crying about this character that we met 2 minutes ago. If you'd given us an additional scene that showed that relationship developing over those 6 months, even if it were, as she got shot, flashbacks to a few moments of them laughing together, comforting each other, just something that helped us as the audience feel that bond, then it probably would have felt more justifiable. But we didn't get that, and so it was just like, oh, there's the tears.
I suppose a concern would be that this Doctor was introduced as the one who sort of skipped one or had done therapy. Like this, but that was the kind of thing in the beginning, that 14 was about to begin that process of being more open and being more understanding of themselves, whereas 15 had done that process, right? The timeline of which still makes no sense to me, but sure, listen, it's Doctor Who. I'm not going to stress too much about that. My concern being is, like, if that's just how they explain everything away. The Doctor has good cry and gets it out of him and he's fine, he's next. And because again, too much of a good thing. Like, you can go too far the other way as well. And some of the bad bits of early Doctor Who was when he didn't show anything, you know, and then that was equally not great.
It's healthy to cry every now and then, but
for sure. But like, yeah, sort of ration it out a little bit more, because again, I'm kind of imagining the comments as well as I'm thinking of this from a storytelling perspective. You know, remember, this isn't the real world. So in our criticizing the Doctor crying every episode, I'm not saying people cannot cry all the time. That's not what we're saying. We're saying from a storytelling perspective, I see this as he had a cry and now he's okay. I'm like, yeah, that's a shortcut. You know, like that's not. And also, then I don't believe that you were friends there for 6 months.
Yeah,
you know, because then did it affect you?
You know what I think should have happened? Now I'm thinking about it. We're talking about missing scenes and things. They should have got rid of that moment where it kind of cut the tension of the moment. It was kind of like, quick, run, we're safe, and then everyone's arguing. Pause a minute for the Doctor to have his cry. Now let's solve the problem, which it felt a bit kind of out of place in that, kind of wedged in between those moments. But what you should have done is taken that bit away. Had the tears if you needed them in that slow motion response when he saw her being shot and he was like screaming no. Have a tear there. And then replace those few seconds that had the scene of him crying later on with the flashback of him building a friendship and relationship with Sasha 55, and there you go. You've got the additional scene that shows you the bond. You've got the tears that are justifiable in the moment that he just watches her be shot, and then we can just get on with the plot, and we don't have to pause so the Doctor can have a cry.
I'd go one further. Be like, don't pause. Don't do the flashback. Have a couple of lines of dialogue.
Yeah. To be fair, the slow motion shouting no was enough for me. I felt that. I did feel that, but that was enough. I didn't need another moment. Yeah. And then it's like you address it later.
Yeah, it felt like we did it, elbow in the ribs. Did you see us do it? No, we got it. Mm-hmm. Trust your audience. I think it's safe to say we didn't love it.
No, and I think at first I thought it was different and I liked it. Then I did start to criticize it, and I know that we did have a lot of comments of people accusing me of saying that I'm just saying that men shouldn't cry and, you know, the toxic masculinity and all of that jazz. And that's still not what I'm saying. I mean, this episode literally shines a light on both ends of the spectrum in terms of toxic masculinity and you know, maybe being the other end of the spectrum. But and it's not that. From a story, as you say, from a story perspective, it's just getting old now.
Yeah,
it's not new. It's predictable, and it's lost its impact. It was different. It was a switch up, and that made it interesting. Now, not so much.
That would
over-egged the pudding. But anyway, let's move on. Talking about crying, I've also had a lot of people who were not impressed that I did not give a down to the poor cat. So I'm going to give an honorary down here in this discussion to the cat, the scene with the cat. Now, I did mention this at the end of the ups and downs, but I'm just going to highlight it again here for those of you who might not have seen that. Some of you may be wondering why I didn't give a down to that. We have decided, when I say we, I have decided.
Yeah, it's like, I'm learning with everyone else here, yeah.
But we've decided to be a bit more refined in our ups and downs and in terms of what we consider an up and we consider a down, because it became quite clear to me that our ups and down balance was massively off. Because when you give the ups, it's very easy to just go, well, this line was an up and this reference was an up and this very brief shooting star was an up. Whereas the downs, I feel like we're much more, you know, concise with what we down. And so I felt the scene with the cat, while it wasn't good in terms of it was shocking, I wouldn't say it didn't negatively impact the episode. And so I didn't want to give it a down as a flippant down just to be like, well, they killed the cat, because actually, although it was shocking, I think that's actually a good thing for the episode. You know, we've commented that we want the episodes to maybe have a darker feel to them.
Yep.
I did comment in the ups and downs, was it maybe a step too far? But I think in terms of the episode, it was actually, it aided the episode because it had that shocking impact. So I just wanted to highlight that because, our ups and downs count was wildly different for this episode than if you went back to the ups and downs for season 1. If you look at the ups and downs,
as Danny told you to down that one, but you're a cat hater.
I'm not. I have 2 cats actually. But if you go back to our Space Babies ups and downs, there was a lot more ups. Like I said at the end of the ups and downs, this is such a better episode than Space Babies. But if you went and looked at the ups and downs for it, you'd go, well, your ups and downs count say otherwise. So I just felt, let's just justify. We've changed it slightly. I've refined it a little bit. But on the topic of Space Babies, how much better was this episode than Space Babies?
I enjoyed this episode more than Space Babies. Like we've said it many times, and I'll say it again. Space Babies was someone made a silly gag and they made it into an episode. Whereas this one felt like an episode. Do you know what I mean? It felt like a story. It felt like there was a reason for things to happen. And I mean, Space Babies is going to be reviewed a little bit more harshly because it was a season premiere.
Yeah, but when you compare this season premiere with season 1's, there's no contest really. And I think it actually is a good example of the downsides, I'd say, of using that Disney budget. Because the monsters in this episode, the robots, even the AI owl device, AI generator, was all was like a physical built set or physically crafted monsters. They feel to me much more like my kind of Who, the practical effects over the CGI effects. Compare that to probably the painstaking time, money, effort that went into making those babies' mouths move. And which was better?
You just don't like Captain Poppy.
I mean, we're not reviewing Space Babies. There's a whole video on that. But I just feel like, yes, okay, maybe like financially, the practical things probably are very expensive, but that is much better to me. I loved the robots. I think they had that kind of like 50s space vibe to them.
Yeah.
I liked those. I do agree they did feel a little bit like you're not very menacing.
No, no, they were
But
not. That
especially
was Al's job.
if anyone watched the Unleashed episode afterwards, it was quite funny. Which there was a scene or a whole bit about them, like the stuntmen inside them learning to walk in them, and there was a rehearsal going on, and one of them was walking, and he caught his foot on the robot's foot on the floor, and he just face planted the floor. Robot just went, and it was quite funny. And the thing is, if you're stuck inside that as well, there's nothing you can do. You've just got to fall and
That's it. Yeah, like
hope that you're not going to hurt yourself.
I'm assuming / hoping it was just full of padding.
Yeah, I think he was fine. The amount of people that like swarmed to help him up.
Yeah, because they're all just like, "Oh my God, is the model okay?"
Probably. I did think that myself. I was like, oh, that's going to cost a pretty penny if he's just broken that by falling on his face.
But no, I did. I like the style. Yeah, you're right. It's very 50s, very retro, futuristic. And I quite like the city on the planet as well. Decent use of CGI, I thought. Very Dalek-y in the way those
It
ships
was, wasn't it?
Yeah, were flying through. Obviously, the robots themselves didn't look Dalek-y, but I kind of got like the Emperor of the Daleks feeling off the AI section, and then of course the little ships flying around shooting at the rebels.
There was also slightly a Cyberman vibe as well. You know, the idea of like converting Belinda into a robot. That's very, very Cyberman-y.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned the best robot in this episode.
Polish.
Polish.
Yes, Polish, the abortion bot.
Yeah, that was
a bit
good.
like
That was funny because I mean, the scene itself was funny, but then when you think about it on a deeper level, the fact that this guy's basically just been killed and they're just laughing about it, you're like, ooh.
and not just laughing. The doctor gets a proper belly laugh as well.
It's like, yeah, it was one of those like in the moment you're like, yeah, that's really funny. He polished him up, and then afterwards you're like, actually. And while I'm thinking about it, beginning of the episode, in the hospital, and the doctor zaps the computer and literally knocks out all of the electricity in the entire hospital.
Yeah, how many people did he just kill in the ICU?
Have we just ignored the fact that he's just killed anyone on life support?
That's all right. What would the Time Lord Victoria say? Just some little people.
Just, some little people. Yeah. But it was interesting that this is the Doctor who values life overall, and then things like that were turned into a joke, and he's like, oopsie, and you're like, actually, have you considered the impact of that little oopsie that you've just made? Because,
pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, I have seen the internet standing polish, all right.
Yeah, I really liked him. I think he was really cute, but also it could easily have just been a gimmick, but he actually was relevant to the plot.
Yeah.
It could have very easily just been that kind of annoying thing they put in there to try and sell toys or whatever. And actually, he was important to the plot, but also was cute. Very much reminded me of Gadget from The Waters of Mars. And he goes, Gadget, Gadget.
Oh, yep.
Immediately, I was just like, oh, it's like Gadget, but cuter. It also reminded me of, you know, this is such a weird thing. You know, in the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, the Jim Carrey film.
Yeah.
And there's the scene after he comes down to the holiday cheermeister thing. But then everyone turns against him, and like there's fires going on, and he's trying to run away. And there's the tiny little people in their little car, and he commandeers their car. And it's this tiny, tiny little car, and these tiny little people, and he's like, scooch over, and he steals their car, and he's driving. And this is kind of tangent, but he's like riding on this tiny little car, and it still reminded me of that tiny little car that Grinch was riding.
There you are now, Easter eggs.
I love that film. This just tells you how many times I've seen that film. That is like Christmas staple. I've watched it pretty much every year since it was released.
I do enjoy that one.
Such a good film. It's not Christmas if you haven't watched that film.
No, I do enjoy that one. We're like, oh my God, it's April and we're discussing Christmas. Sure it is, and you only have a few shopping days left to go.
Right, I'm hoping that Danny has found that scene so that there's some context to what I'm talking about. In fact, I will find it and send it to him so that it makes it into this edit.
There's just a picture of Danny just shaking his head in his hands or something, going like, get back to talking about Doctor Who.
Okay, well, we will do that. We'll move on to arguably another big takeaway from this episode. We've spoken about maybe the mysteries surrounding Belinda, but this is an episode that actually dropped a lot of mysteries and set up a lot of things to hopefully get some answers to and some revelations about moving forwards. Lots of things. I mean, obviously, we've got the kind of the whole Schwupp time distortion fracture thing.
Yep.
What's going on there? Obviously, you've got why can't they land back in May on Earth in 2025? Why they're bouncing off of Earth?
Swear to God, if that is just brushed aside and like land the TARDIS in Long Island and get a taxi.
Right, okay, I'm glad it wasn't just me that thought this, because I think you mentioned it in our group chat when you were watching it, like, why?
Yeah.
Let's not have a
Can't land in
Angels
May.
Take
Land in April, then.
Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the whole Angels Take Manhattan. Oh, I can't ever take the TARDIS back there. Okay, leave it a year and then pick them up.
Exactly,
Or
yeah.
tell them to go somewhere else in the world where you can land. I don't get this. But yeah, so I'm hoping that we're obviously going to get some answers to that, you would hope. Obviously, what has happened to Earth? Why is the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, a London black cab, and basically any landmark that is recognisable as Earth floating through space?
It just reminds me of that wonderful film, Independence Day Resurgence, where Jeff Goldblum was like, they really like to hit the landmarks. I'm like, yeah, they sure do.
Yeah, it was quite funny, yeah. And I guess also we have the question of who is this mysterious man who told the Doctor to find Belinda?
Like, I wonder, is it, we've seen versions of this before. Is it the Doctor? Is it this baby the Doctor is holding is actually Belinda's son? Who knows? But yeah, I am looking forward to this. I would like them to be someone. We've kind of done a few times now where it turned out it was no one. And you've given us that variety, and I appreciate that. But let's have it be someone again.
Yeah, and then of course we've still got Mrs. Flood. We saw Mrs. Flood in the episode. We know she's going to appear in every single episode in some way. There she is. The neighbour to a companion yet again. That is not a coincidence.
At all,
She's
yeah.
breaking the fourth wall. She clearly didn't want to be spotted by the Doctor. So I sense things are going to develop there.
I don't know if I'm loving the fourth wall breaks.
If it turns out there's a reason for it and it really fits with whatever the revelation is, I can accept it. But a little bit like the crying, it's getting a little bit old now.
A little bit, because we had, obviously, Mrs. Flood herself back in Space Babies, the Doctor in the Devil's Cord.
Yeah. Mrs. Flood does it basically every episode she's in.
A little bit, yeah.
It's how Joy to the World ended, was Mrs. Flood breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, of course. I'm kind of like, when you break the fourth wall, it's a big thing in a show that is not designed around breaking the fourth wall. So, I don't know. Are we going to get a very meta episode where, we go to the BBC studios and Doctor Who is being filmed? Which I don't hate. But,
No.
Are we going somewhere? Or is it going to be just never addressed?
I can't imagine it wouldn't be addressed. There's got to be something to it because it's so different and it's this one specific character. So I'm hoping that there's going to be something more to it. But if it ends up, I said in the ups and downs, I was like, I'm loving all these mysteries, but for the love of God, if all of the solutions are she was pointing at a signpost, I am not going to be happy.
But it said Ruby Road. It's fine. It's all fine.
It wasn't even there to start with.
Yeah. Listen.
Oh, goodness me. Are there any other mysteries? I mean, I guess the only other question we have is there going to be more relevance to the fact that the Doctor has met Mundy Flynn and now Belinda? But I'm hoping we're not going to have a repeat of being drawn to this person, a kind of impossible girl situation again.
I think, yeah, because because like, remember again, going back to Donna, the Doctor saying like, in all the time and space that brought me back to you. Same with Wilf. Like, let it be like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
although there was a big reason for that. That was the whole Dr. Donna thing, wasn't it? It was Khan making them come together to fulfill the prophecy.
Yeah.
There's always more to it. So,
which is good. I like when there's more to it.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
like it when there's more to it than just ignoring things, but I don't want it to become the entire point of this season.
One thing I've seen people talking about online, I quite liked the lying planet of the incels.
Oh, see, that was in my downs.
I quite liked it. I thought, yeah, because there are too many people like that out there. And I quite liked that Belinda would be the very character to be like, yeah, I'm not having any of this nonsense.
I think the thing is, I like that it was a line that Belinda said. What I don't like is that these episodes are just being less and less subtle in what their overall message is, and that's what's driving me a bit mental at the moment.
I felt the way this one was handled, I mean, like, there's no subtlety in the line, but I thought the way it was handled, I thought was an improvement to the way some things have been handled.
I mean, I think yes, but also I'd just like to watch an episode and not at any point go, "Oh, that was the message of this episode." Can we have one that isn't about a message?
Jesus, I think to do that, you'd have to go back to Sylvester McCoy.
I think I just like to dig a little deeper to figure out what it is they're trying to say rather than go, "Oh, AI. Yeah, okay." No subtlety, it's AI. I know there was a twist, but the twist came right at the end. I spent the majority of the episode going, here we go. Here's some comments on AI. AI bad.
I mean, sure, AI, but also what we feed it. I thought that was the kind of the wider one, is that, Alan, who is just the worst, was feeding all of this negativity into it, which is then what comes out of that is only what you put into it. It's a great discussion, actually. It's a longer, we probably don't have time to get into it here, but a longer discussion about ChatGPT, for example, because ChatGPT is a tool, and it can spit out what you put into it. Very, very quick. I have a couple of friends who are college lecturers, and they're going through how do we deal with this? Students will use this. We're not naive. But, how do we then grade it? And now this is a few months ago, so it probably has changed since. They're like, well, we have to judge it on what the output is. And if you put in the wrong stuff, it will spit out the wrong stuff. So we can kind of grade it based around that. So there's kind of like Alan is there feeding all of this negativity and this incel, probably Andrew Tate rubbish into it. And that's what comes out then. It's a bit
like,
of
I do get it. I totally get it. I just feel like, why did that need to be the point of the Doctor episode?
It's an episode about robots.
It's an episode about robots. Yeah, I'd rather it was an episode about robots. Just robots, I don't know.
No, that's what I mean. That's why. That's because it was about artificial life.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe this one was more subtle than others have been, but I've just come to the point where I've hit the wall now, where I'm just bored of the overly messaging episodes. I just want something fun. Give me Love and Monsters.
Yous all derided it at the time. Yous all derided it.
I don't want to think while I'm watching. I just want to enjoy.
Give me something nice and light. Doomsday.
Yeah. That's what I mean, though. I just think,
started playing.
Stories. I feel like some of these episodes, the story is taking a back seat to other things, and I think the story should always be at the focus. The characters and the stories should be the focus of what these episodes are. And I think some of them, it's been more of a case of, here's something we want to talk about in this episode, so that's take priority over, let's make a great episode and we can try and add this in a subtle way that makes our audience think, and then they can come to their own conclusions about what it is we're maybe trying to say. Whereas this was AI generator, so there's no room for imagination there. Even if you just called it the generator, let us come to the conclusion that it's AI. But just using the word that we're all familiar with makes it so unsubtle. This is what it is. Don't go thinking it might be anything else. Don't use your brains. We're just going to tell you this is what it's all about. That's what I'm just like, and that's why I think the line in the context of Belinda saying it was funny, and she would be the kind of person to say it, but you didn't need to add that explicit line to say this is about incels, because we already understood that from the way you had presented Alan as a character. So I didn't need that extra line to just hammer it home that this is what we're talking about.
I'm not sure I agree, but I respect your point.
Well, this is the thing. This is a healthy place to have conversations about our thoughts about these things, and we can disagree on it, and that is absolutely fine.
almost
That's
like
the
two
point.
adults discussing something on the internet and not calling each other names. Bonkers. Bonkers.
Anyway, we won't rank them at the moment because we've only got one episode, so we won't do a ranking yet. But as next week, once we've got 2 episodes, we will start to rank them as we did for season 1.
Cool.
But speaking of next week, we did have a very brief trailer for episode 2, Lux. I'm very excited about this episode. This is the episode that I think I am the most excited for. Since we saw any sort of footage, since we got like little teasers about them, I am such a big fan of things like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Space Jam, Looney Tunes back in action, when you have the combination of cartoon and live action. So I'm so excited for this episode.
Yeah, no, I same. I think it looks like this is going to be our horror episode as well, because it looks like it's going to be genuinely unsettling to watch. So I'm looking forward to it.
I've seen, I think it was Ellie Jolly, who I met at the Joy to the World screening. I also met her at the most recent screening. She did a review and she was talking about this episode, Lux, and what she was thinking might be happening. And she drew comparisons to the Torchwood episode from Out of the Rain. Is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called.
Gosh, okay.
From Out of the Rain, yes, which is the one that Julian Bleach is in.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
And the kind of circus performers, characters come out of the films. And I feel like this could have very similar vibes in the opposite way. Instead of people coming out of the film and killing people. Well, Mr. Ringerding is clearly stepping out of the film. People are going missing, so I feel like maybe it's and we've seen in the trailers that Belinda and the Doctor are going to be cartoonized. So I think perhaps maybe it's like an opposite to that episode of Torchwood.
No, I'm looking forward to that. Also, I know I made this joke already. It's like, are they cartoonized because they just could not schedule Shooty for filming every episode this season? It's like, right, we've got to get an animated one. But no, I'm looking forward to it. And also, Alan Cummings. I'd be on board for that alone.
Yeah, I have high hopes for this episode, so don't let me down. Don't let me down. I'm really excited for this one.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Until next week. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.